My name is Lanre Kolade. I'm the chairman of Connected Compute and also the CEO and founder of Koltronics Nigeria Limited. Up until April of this year, I was the group CEO of a company called C Squared Link Holdings. C Squared Link Holdings is into fiber infrastructure across the continent. So I've been in the industry now since 1998, actually for 26 years, and I've been across all markets practically in Africa. I'm widely experienced in connectivity, cross-border connectivity, and my ambition and my drive is how to reduce the digital divide that we have on the continent and actually how to democratize connectivity. Very passionate about leapfrogging Africa's journey into the next frontier, as they say, and trying to get Africa to a place where we are no longer digitally colonized, because I see that as a problem if we don't wake up to it. So my view is, how do we get the literacy in Africa digitally to be enhanced? How do we get the governments to give us the right infrastructure? And how do we get the private sector to actually engage to get commercially sustainable projects on the continent?
All right. Welcome to the African Tech Roundup. That's some introduction. Thank you for setting the context there.
Thank you very much.
Quite a number of things. Well, quite literally wearing a hat today, but you've worn many hats in what is now a fairly lengthy career in telecoms, broadband, fiber. What do you identify with most when you reflect on your career?
I think what I will consider to be like a milestone in my journey so far was the ability to land the first landing in on continental Africa of the Google Equiano cable.
Okay.
And that was done in Togo. And in the initial plan for Google, Togo was not on the map. Okay, so we practically midwifed the opportunity from zero to delivery. It was a 2-year journey, and it was something that I'm very proud of having achieved that.
All right, so what a perfect way to start, because I think a project like that gives us an opportunity to sort of unpack what it looks like to entrepreneurially identify an opportunity, a gap in the market that serves a very specific and real need on one hand, and the pragmatic interests of people who would engage with that need profitably.
Yes.
All right. So give us a sense of what some of the oversimplifications someone who hasn't experienced being in a situation like that typically thinks of a deal or an opportunity like that.
I think invariably you think it's something that you can close easily.
Okay.
I'm talking about a PPP with the government. Okay. So it's something that we had to go into, like, rehearsing. How do you do a deal, with the sovereign? How do you structure a deal where invariably the opportunity itself is not commercially viable? How do you then look for
viable to who? The
viable commercially?
Commercially.
Okay. So how do you de-risk that opportunity? Okay. Because bringing in commercial funding into such a project was very, very difficult. So you needed to kind of bring in a blend of financing for that to happen. Okay. A special purpose vehicle was set up with the government. So there's a joint venture with the government of Togo for that deal to happen. My previous role as a CEO of C Squared. So invariably you had the private entity C Squared having to come up with an idea to say, look, government, we can land this cable in Togo. It's a lot of capacity for your country, but you need to be able to create capillarity to bring the cable first on the cable landing station. How do you now distribute that within the metro? So there was a concession for the metro network. There was a concession for the OPGW fiber network. Bringing all that in, bringing the equipment in, just to make sure that everything ties together. So how do you bring that financing to the way government will think about the developmental impact of the project? And how do you convince shareholders to say, look, this deal is bankable? It was simple when the idea started. For me, it was one of those things that you just say, okay, I think this thing is possible. But when you then go into it, you now realize, okay, it is possible, but you need to go through the motions. And I've always had this mantra: nothing venture, nothing gained. Okay, and there's something about me being from a Nigeria upbringing, that impossible is not in our vocabulary.
Yeah.
Okay, so you need to understand that the only thing that is impossible is what you haven't thought about. If you think about it, you can always navigate around it.
Let's start with, in that, not a story, more the anecdote rather, with the idea of blended finance, because I think that speaks to incentives. I think it speaks to the potential for mutual benefit. Yes. What sort of financial arrangements are necessary? What sort of blended finance? And how does thinking about that finance, or talking about that finance, maybe articulate the various interests and what people are trying to get out of a project like that?
The deal, like I said, was a $30 million deal. So we needed the government of Togo to actually cough off some of that money, okay? Because for them, it was developmental.
So it had to come from the fiscus. There had to be a commitment.
Exactly.
A commitment.
A commitment from the physicals to say, look, it's a project we're very much interested in. We're going to back it up with regulation. We're going to back it up with licensing. And we're going to give you, in quotes, a sovereign guarantee, which is, in this case, was not a sovereign guarantee, was actually a backed up finance from themselves. So they put in part of the financing that we used. We now went to, because as part of the structure of C Squared, we had the IFC. So we had access to World Bank. So we were able to access the IDA window within the World Bank. So some money was gotten from that area. Okay, then we also got some vendor financing, then equity from the shareholders. So it was a lot of different kind of, what I call it, monies now that were put into that basket to make sure that project was viable in quote. So delivering the project and make it sustainable were actually two different things. And the impact, okay, how do you measure impact? Okay, impact for the stakeholders, the various stakeholders in the industry, the fact that you're going to bring in a cable that, in quote, a country that's less than 10 million people will have access to 3 terabytes of capacity. What are you going to do with it? How do you increase capillarity? How do you then say Togo has multiple countries attached to that are bordered to it? Okay, how do you then increase that to say Togo now becomes a tributary into those other countries, So it increases the advantages and the benefits of Togo for not just being to offer capacity to landlocked countries too.
Right.
So the economics attached to it is not only for that project. There are other backup things that come with it.
What are your thoughts on what kind of finance doesn't help in a situation like that?
Commercial money won't help, okay, because the kind of returns, the profile of that kind of money. For that kind of project, the money must be patient. You need patient capital. You need capital that understands first that what we're trying to do is developmental.
But is it pragmatic money that needs to see a return or sustainability?
It needs to see
articulated?
Return. Exactly.
Okay. So it's not that we're not talking foreign aid a la grant.
No.
Okay.
No, but you see, you need the grants to make that commercial money work. Because in its own, you can't make that investment of $30 million. It won't work.
Right.
But the impact of that $30 million to the economy of that country is significant. Okay, so you need to marry it together. So that's why I'm saying the fiscal part of it and the commercial money part of it will now be blended with maybe some debts from a very low interest, okay, and some grants. And some very innovative vendor finance that say, okay, look, we're very interested in this country. We think we can give it a 2-to-1 kind of thing, okay? You bring in $2 million of money, I back it up with $1 million of debt, and blend it like that. The incentive is not only going to be a profit.
Right.
The incentive is how do we reduce the digital equality that we're talking that's happening, okay? And how do we actually make equity in terms of digital literacy across board?
I can already tell you have a very long-termist view to thinking about opportunity and why to go about chasing or solving for problems. What have you found has been challenging in translating that, what is obviously a long-termist view, and you'd need a long-term view for a deal like that to happen.
Yeah.
Translating that to players who might be constrained by, I don't know, a 4-year election cycle, various financial cycles that might not account for how long and far you need to think about.
I think I'll actually go back to an conversation that I had yesterday with somebody about Nigeria. And the argument was, okay, Nigeria's finances right now are bad, the economy is bad. And I reminded the same person that at one time, people were taking billions of dollars out of Nigeria. Those guys that invested at the right time were able to scale. At one time, the portfolio for some of the MNOs in Nigeria amounted to about 60% of their global EBITDA. They were making a lot of money.
Hello, MTN. I remember those days.
So invariably, at that time, everything was rosy. So you can now not say the same market that was delivering those, like the golden eggs at that time, is no longer viable. It is just the nature of things. Things go up, they go down. But you see, you've made the right investments. There's a lot of sunk cost in that investment. So the only thing you need to do is patiently sweat it out and wait for that, the hockey stick to go back up. And honestly, that is all that it takes. You need patience. Doing business in Africa is not just you come with a briefcase and you go out.
I was going to say,
be embedded into the people.
I was actually going to say part of what endears me to this industry, to the telco space and fiber and broadband largely, is that it's relative to other digital transformation buzz areas. It does seem less kind to people with an extractive mindset. Right?
Yes.
And there's something about that I quite like. However, we are living in an environment where the drivers in terms of like the storytelling and the narrative for where tech is going. Think of, the crypto story or the AI story. And it does really feel urgent. It feels rushed. There's a fear of missing out. If it's a spectrum, on one end, you have what I've just described. On the other hand, you've got a situation where you can be a little too invested in the sunk cost and sweating it.
Yes.
And
you miss the fact that you need to let go.
You need to let go of some things. You need to innovate at the right time as well. I think we're seeing that now with Starlink causing a bit of a stir. So how do you self-regulate?
Let me go back to your Starlink cutting of a stir.
Okay.
The laws of physics are still the laws of physics. Yeah. Until the laws of electromagnetism changes, there will be a limit to what Starlinks can do. When I spoke earlier about capillarity, if you have a good fiber network within a dense location like Lagos, Abuja, and all those states in Nigeria, nobody will use a Starlink box. Okay? But you see, that's also what told you that there's an opportunity. So if somebody's ready to pay Starlinks a lot of USD to buy a box that has to do with capped capacity and all that, what it means is if you have the right fiber, you can charge that same amount of money, provide a higher level of SLE that is not affected by rain fade, that is fiber to your home, and that is rain. So that is an opportunity in my view. Okay, it's not really not negative. It's people looking at it and saying, okay, look, why is this technology that is not supposed to beat fiber within a city beating fiber in a city? Okay, so that's where I want to look at it. Maybe just going back to your question now. Somebody was giving me this story. One of the founders of one of the unicorns in Nigeria, and he said there's a place in Yaba called the Silicon Valley of Lagos. So that fiber maybe it was less than $50,000 investment, but that fiber connectivity to that location generated two unicorns. But you see, if that can happen, what it then meant was the guys that decided at that time to say we will spend this money may not have understood the impact it was going to have. But you see, there is a generational impact on that. No, people will never have believed that there was going to be possible for a unicorn to come out of that place. But it did.
Or make the connection to an infrastructural investment of that nature.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Which I tell people, the infrastructural investments is not for the immediate return, which is why, in my view, right, I know that this infrastructure is necessary for the growth of the ecosystem, not necessarily to generate returns immediately for the investors of it, which is why you need patient capital to make it happen, which is why it is not just going to be commercial money. Because if it's commercial money, then the pricing of sustaining will be expensive. But if it is a blended form of money, okay, the commercial guys will make their money from it, but at the same time, the price will be such a way that it will encourage people to want to innovate. It will encourage people to want to make mistakes. It will encourage people to want to fail and actually fail forward, and then make changes happen. And you will see that hockey stick like I'm talking. The bottom line is this: Africans are smart. But you see, no matter how smart you are, if you don't have the right infrastructure, you can't code.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right infrastructure, you cannot do something.
Who knew you needed electricity for these things?
Do you understand?
Yeah.
And those are the basics.
Yeah.
I tell anybody that used to listen, if you make electricity in Nigeria, that is where I come from.
You'll be a problem.
Nigeria. To work 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Leave the rest.
Oh my word.
Just imagine the electricity working in representing Nigeria.
Yeah.
It will blow everybody up. People will be shocked what will happen in that environment. But you can't do it with private money.
But then this is elder statesman talk, right? And we come now. So
look, the thing is, it's just you can't put the cart before the horse. You need to do what you need to do, and you have to do it.
But tell me, what's it like then in your peer group? People are obsessed with their KPAs and their shareholder value optimization drives, and I'm sure in your storied career as a board chair and other things, you've seen some of the awkward incentives.
Yes.
And you have to empathize with executives around the continent who are incentivized to pursue...
To deliver.
Yeah, to deliver what looks like winning in the short term.
Yes.
So then what's the private conversation you've had where the rubber needs to meet the road, where the sensibilities you're sharing here, which resonate with me personally, and perhaps easily because I'm not an M&O CEO. What does it look like practically with you and your peers in a room, no one else there, you're trying to get through to them or a policymaker or any number of those deal makers or participants to the deal you described in Togo?
There are different, when you have multiple stakeholders,
Yeah.
there are different levers for each stakeholder. And I was fortunate to be in a business that had 4 equal shareholders with 4 different incentives.
Oh, wow.
You can understand
With
that.
an equal
shareholders,
weighted,
yes.
equal votes?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
But they all had 4 different KPIs that they think about. So I used to tell them then I had 4 husbands, okay? Because it's not 4 wives. In Africa, when you have 4 wives, you can tell the wives what to do.
Oh.
But I had 4 husbands.
The stakeholder whisperer.
Exactly. Okay, so you can understand, I understood what everybody wanted, okay? And then you need to navigate that dynamic. So within a business, okay, the equity partners in that business, they want a return on their money. You also have a stakeholder with you that is maybe the regulator within your industry. You need to deliver the universal service funding thing, rural telephony, those kind of things. Okay.
Right.
So I think the biggest issue is how do you marry all that as a CEO?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. You should be given incentives for your delivery.
By the board?
By everybody.
Okay.
Okay, invariably. Okay, but you see, it's a balance. You can't say because you are a CEO, there's an opportunity to make $1 billion for your board and you won't make it. At the same time, you can't want to make them billions of dollars and maybe you are the CEO of ExxonMobil or Chevron or whatever and say, while making that, I will destroy the environment. So you need to balance
the spectrum.
Exactly. So I think that is where the challenge is. And I think that's why CEOs are paid what they are paid because they need to be able to handle all the stakeholders. A lot of them they have to be with the ministers. They need to understand what the government is thinking. Their boards are telling them, look, your returns are not coming in. And the guy knows that if I don't deliver this, I lose my job. So we understand when we talk what we need to do. At the same time, there's that, I won't call it Africa capitalism. I would just call it Africanness and a lot of people that work on the continent.
Right.
To know that, yes, you have an obligation. That obligation is not only to yourselves, okay? It is to your organizations and is also to the place where you work.
Yeah.
To deliver.
Yeah, you've given me even more empathy for people in that position.
No, it's tough.
Perhaps, I was looking at some of the churn rates for senior executives in modern times.
Yes.
It's
not funny.
It's not fun. It's not fun in games and. Glad we have folks like you up there doing the hard yards. But thank you so much for joining us. In fact, one last thing, if you'll indulge me. Speak to yourself. You said 1998 when you began?
Yes, that's when I started my career.
Okay. Speak to Lanre in 1998, knowing what you know now about your career, how it unfolded. Give Lanre a tip on how to make the next couple of decades easier on Lanre, but also perhaps even more impactful and better for the world.
I have a phrase that I go with that says you cannot correct an inaction. And I've always used that as my guide for myself. If I knew that in 1998, I'm sure Lanre would have been...
Lanre was just chilling, waiting for things to happen.
Yes.
Oh, my word.
So Lanre would have known... If Lanre had known that then,
yeah,
Lanre would have been elsewhere by now.
Well,
I'm sure I would have been an entrepreneur earlier.
Yeah.
So invariably, I've seen me do things like the Togo project I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It was an idea. I just flew into Togo for a weekend to do something else.
And it turns into this...
And it turned into a project.
This seminal life's work.
Yeah. So I sold it to the government, sold it to my board, sold it to the financiers and delivered it. Okay. If you don't do it, you don't know that it's going to work. So you need to try. So like I said, you cannot correct an inaction. Make the decision and then iterate as you go ahead. But decide on something. Make a decision.
And get it done.
Get it done.
Lanre Kolade, Chairman of Connected Compute. Thank you so much for being on the African Tech Roundup.
Thank you very much for your time.